What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the PFF NFL show. Trevor, Sikkema, Max, Chadwick here for you guys, filling in for Dalton Washman as we freak out over combine performances. And Max, you got the call up here for this show simply because, well, I think you freak out about combine performances a little bit more than Dalton. So we switched it out and we gave you the opportunity to freak out here with me because we saw some unreal performances on day one of the field drills in the Indianapolis Scouting Combine. It was the defensive line, the edge rushers, the defensive tackles, and the linebackers that were on display, and historic performances. And man, I'm excited to break it down with you. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. You know, Dalton called it the underwear Olympics one too many times, so we had to cut him from the show today. But yeah, I'm excited, man. There were some awesome players that we saw at the Combine yesterday. A lot of guys that are going to be top 15 picks in the draft showed why they're going to be top 15 picks in the draft. Like you said, some historic Combine performances.
No question about it. So let's just dig right into it. And we're going to have some, obviously, a little bit more detailed conversations on the exact performances from a lot of these guys. We'll go through a ton of the numbers. We'll talk about, percentiles, how rare it is that they performed the way that they did. We'll also give you some updated measurables from what were confirmed from yesterday as well. So it was a big day for information. So we'll talk about these prospects, but also I think that as we kind of go through these drills and we get these confirmed measurements, medicals, testing times, everything, it gives us a good feel of how strong or how weak some of these positions are. But man, in the case of yesterday, it's basically just strong. It's incredible. Speaking of, let's start with the man of the hour, the man of the week, a performance that I just do not think is going to be topped. So we started off with the absolute best in Sony Styles, the off-ball linebacker from Ohio State. So Styles, some numbers here for him. 6'5", 245 pounds, which first and foremost, Max, is hilarious because 2 years ago, this guy was playing safety at 6'5". And I know he wasn't 240 when he was playing safety, but it's just hilarious to think of him basically as a bigger sized linebacker. And that would have been the case of defensive back as well. Long arms, big hands, but specifically the on-field drills, man. Unbelievable. 4.46 official 40-yard dash. 1.56 10-yard split, 43.5-inch vertical, which, Max, the vertical was the best of any linebacker of the group, of course. It was the best of any linebacker since 1999, which is as far as Mock Draftable's database goes. It was the 15th highest jump of any player at any position, and he's the only player in combine history, well, I shouldn't say combine history, going back to 1999, that jumped over 43 inches at over 240 pounds. Just insane athleticism. 11.2 broad jump, 7.093 cone drill, 4.26 short shuttle. I mean, like, the agility drills are like, oh, they were only in the 80th percentile? Okay, no one really cares. The rest of the stuff was 99th. But just your thoughts overall on Sony Styles, watching it. You watch so much more college football even than I do, and we kind of watch it through a different lens, which is why I love having you and Dalton, obviously, as part of this show with me seeing things from more of like a draft perspective. But you've seen a ton of Sony Styles. Talk to me about what you saw yesterday, how crazy it was to see that, and also just what you saw from Styles when you watched Ohio State as much as you did this past season.
Trev, one of the first comments in our chat right now is from the amazing Gordo saying, Sony Styles, my lord. And that's exactly my response to yesterday's performance, honestly. And
I don't know what that means. What does that mean? What just happened there?
I think he's either saying my lord as in what a performance, or my lord as in like Game of Thrones, like Sony Styles after that is like, okay. But Trev, he was a guy that was a top 5 overall recruit coming out of high school. Didn't really play much at Ohio State. Some people were even calling him like a recruiting bust after his first couple of years at Ohio State. You mentioned before, played safety. I think the funniest part about yesterday and how amazing he was yesterday, there were some people talking about whether or not he should play edge rusher the way he was looking in the drills yesterday too. So you go from a guy who was a safety coming out of high school, then he played linebacker, and now we're like, oh, can he play edge rusher now too? It's just unreal, the athlete that we have in Sony Styles right now. And like you mentioned before, he moved from safety to linebacker, but he was as physical as any linebacker in the country, when usually those safety to linebacker converts, they kind of struggle with that physicality right now. But, he has the tape to back it up too, man. 88.5 PFF grade, 3rd in the Power 4 for all linebackers, one of only 3 linebackers in the Power 4 to have 85-plus grades in run defense and in coverage. 91.6 tackling grade, led the country as well. So he is a phenomenal football player that on tape alone would have been a top 10 to 15 pick in the draft. Now, after this historic performance in the Combine, like you said yesterday, Trevor, I think he might go in the top 5 of this draft.
I think so too. I mean, when he was at his podium, like even the little X Factor stuff with Sony Styles, when he was at the podium session, it's a small like 15-minute window that you get to talk to him, but it just felt like he was commanding the room. I love a lot of the answers that he had. It just impressed so many people there, which makes you think that he's going to impress the NFL teams as well. You've got the rare athleticism, but the most important thing, and we'll talk about this for a handful of prospects that we'll go through today, is that the tape also reflects the athlete that we saw yesterday. Yep. And I think that's the really important part. And there are a couple of guys who tested really well, who we'll talk about, like, okay, I saw this on tape, I didn't see this on tape. But for Sony Styles, you always saw a great athlete on tape. And you saw that in his grades as well. You mentioned the elite coverage grade, the elite run defense grade, all of that there for him. So, yeah, I think that we entered Thursday morning thinking, man, even for an off-ball linebacker, I think the range in this draft for him starts at number 5 overall with the New York Giants. And after the performance that he had and the way that he moves, and like you mentioned, sure, he's an off-ball line. Yeah, Arvell Reese, who we'll talk about in a second,
sure,
he gets all the talk as like a hybrid off-ball, on-ball linebacker type of a player. Sony Styles is built the way that you would talk about a player like that as well. So now it almost feels like, dude, is 5 the floor? Like, is 5 as low as Sony Styles will go at this point in this draft? I mean, let's think about it. If you are considering Arvell Reese at 2, why wouldn't you consider Sony Styles?
Yep.
I mean, Sony Styles is a more explosive athlete. Sony Styles has a better home base position. He has that versatility to him. And I'm not saying that he's going to go number 2 overall. I think positional value, of course, is a topic here. But Arvell Reese, like, okay, sure, he declares himself as an edge rusher. He's more of an outside linebacker. He wants to be that type of a player. But his pass rush work, even for him being a great athlete, it's a long way away from being effective at the NFL level. He had just what was it? I think you said this on the show the other day. He has just a 13% pass rush win percentage. Yes. What was it this past year? And then you compare that to guys like Micah Parsons and Abdul Carter. Was that am I saying that right?
Yes, 13%. And even like Jalen Walker, who I thought was like a top 15 player last year, he had like a 19% pass rush win rate. Abdul Carter was like at 24% at linebacker. Micah Parsons was like at 23%. So the pass rush productivity for Arvell Reese is not there with the linebacker to edge converts that we've seen in recent years. And also, Trevor, I mean, you mentioned this before too. He had 32.5-inch arms yesterday, which is of course longer than some guys that we'll talk about later on in the show that play edge rusher. But that's also not great for an edge rusher either. So I think I've always thought Sony Styles was the better football player than Arvell Reese, and I think there is a conversation now to be had of who should go higher between Sony Styles and Arvell Reese among Ohio State linebackers.
Dude, he's literally bigger. Yep. He's 6'5", 245 pounds compared to Reese, who is like 6'4", like 240. So it's not a lot. I get it, but like, Sony Styles has longer arms. Mm-hmm. He has bigger hands, and he's more explosive. It's all I'm saying is that if you're considering Arvell Reese at 2, you should be considering Sony Styles at 2.
Yeah.
He should be in that conversation. Now, if you're not, like if you say like, hey, no, more of a player like a Rueben Bain or a Caleb Downs, like that's our guy at number 2, I think those are different conversations. But if you are considering Arvell Reese at number 2, you need to consider Sony Styles at number 2 from what we saw as well.
It's unbelievable that, honestly, and listen, we're talking like Arvell Reese had a bad performance yesterday too. He was unreal at the combine yesterday too. I even put out a tweet yesterday, Trev. I was like, you could argue right now that Caleb Downs is the best football player in this draft. Right now, I would say he's probably going to be the 4th Ohio State player and the 3rd Ohio State defensive player taken in this draft, because nothing wrong that Caleb Downs has done yet. He hasn't even done any drills yet at the combine. Just how unreal. Styles, Arvell Reese, and of course I know Carnell Tate probably will go a little bit higher too just because of the positional value of it too, but the fact that Caleb Downs, who I would argue may be the best player in this draft, is going to be the 4th Ohio State player taken in this draft just shows you the unreal talent that Buckeyes have in this class.
Somebody in the chat saying having long arms and big hands is very weird. Nothing to do with football. I think it has everything to do with football. The length that you have to be able to create that space between you and an offensive lineman or a rusher or a blocker when you are rushing, creating that leverage, being able to get guys on their heels. That's why long arms matter. And then the hands, I don't think people talk enough about hand size when it comes to trench play as well. The bigger your hands, a lot of times the more powerful your punch is, just because you've got quite literally more surface area to be able to hit guys in the chest or in the shoulders or wherever it is. Like, the bigger hands that you have, the more potential punch and control that you have over your opponent. So those things absolutely matter. Now, do I think that sometimes we freak out a little bit over like a half inch here or there when it comes to arm length or hand size or whatever it is? Yes. And we'll talk about that with a couple of guys who are on the shorter side of things here in a second. But all of that stuff, the physical profile does matter a little bit. And it's those little margins that you talk about when you get those official measurements. But I do want to go back to Arvell Reese, because I didn't mean for the Sony Styles praise to necessarily be negative on Arvell Reese. You talked about what an incredible day Arvell Reese had as well. He measured in at 6'4", right over 240 pounds at 241 pounds, 31.5-inch arms, 9.5-inch hands, which, again, for an edge rusher, the height is great. Like, I believe 6'4" is 67th percentile, if I remember that correctly. The weight is like 14th percentile, but you could put more weight on him. We're not really worried about that. The arm length, though, it's shorter arms for an edge rusher. I think it was single-digit percentile for edge rushers for Arvell Reese, if that's going to be how he's viewed. However, 4.46 40-yard dash, 1.58 10-yard split. I mean, this is an incredibly explosive athlete, and when we watched him in the drills on the field doing more of what you would call those football type of movements and seeing what they're able to do, he was extremely explosive. However, Max, I thought he looked a lot better at the off-ball linebacker stop and start, run and chase explosiveness in space than he did the pass rusher stuff. That's why I viewed him as an off-ball linebacker. And even just as an off-ball linebacker, or I shouldn't say just an off-ball linebacker, because he's always going to be versatile. But with off-ball linebacker as his home base, I've always still felt that Reese is worthy of a top 8, top 5 overall selection in this draft. But as an edge rusher, if he's going to say, hey, no, I'm a full-time edge rusher, to me, it clouds things a little bit more than it actually gives you answers. So the Reese had a great combine. It was great to see him check the boxes of explosiveness and athletic ability, but I still view this player as somebody I'd rather have in space than necessarily on the line of scrimmage at all times.
I completely agree with that. I think he is a ideal fit as like a Sam linebacker for a team, honestly. And I think, he's a guy, Trev, that, I think we've grown so accustomed to seeing linebacker to edge converts. It's happened many times in recent years with, like I mentioned before, Micah Parsons, then Abdul Carter, then Jalen Walker as well. Like, oh, he's the next one that's going to do that. I don't think his pass rush productivity is up there with those guys enough to be like, oh, it'll just be a seamless transition like it was for most of those guys, if not all of them, right now, too. I loved his tape at off-ball linebacker. Now, of course, there's a lot to work on with his coverage ability, which he actually said at his podium as well. But as a run defender and as a pass rusher, he's a very dangerous player. And as that Sam linebacker role, you could move him all over the defense. All over the defense, you could have him against offensive tackles, against offensive guards. Even there's some reps against centers that he had this past year at Ohio State, too. So I'm with you, Trev. I think he's an off-ball linebacker prospect. I get why he said he wanted to play on the edge. I'm sure his agent told him to say that because, of course, as we know, edge rushers usually get taken a lot higher than off-ball linebackers, and they usually make a lot more in their second contracts than off-ball linebackers. But I think Arvell Reese's best home and the next level is at off-ball linebacker. And, I think his length kind of showed that, and he's also a freak athlete, too. Running a 4.46 40 is a 95th percentile for all linebackers. He is a freak athlete, and he's still worth probably top 10, top 15 pick in this draft. I just have a lot more questions when you start projecting to be an edge rusher rather than a linebacker.
Let's talk about some guys who we knew that we were going to have this conversation, but were disappointing when it came to the measurables, right? Rueben Bain Jr. is one of them. Cashius Howell is another one that I wanted to point out here. Cashius Howell, somebody who had an elite pass rush grade for us over the last 3 seasons. He is going to be a very interesting, do you trust the tape kind of a player, because when he's out there on a football field, you like what you see. Are there limitations? Yeah, I think that you could see some physical limitations for him, but a lot of those measurables will stand out to you as a guy that you're not going to want to take a chance on in the top 20. Now, every draft's a little bit different, but Cashius Howell, 6'2.5", 253 pounds, 30 1/4 inch arm length. That's the shortest of any edge rusher at the combine since 1999. Other than someone who was also in this class in Caden Curry, who had a 30 1/8 inch arm length. I don't know if you saw that, Max, but I didn't catch that initially, and people were letting me know about that. But 30 and a fourth, obviously, that's not just small, that's outlier small there for Cashius Howell. Didn't love his vertical jumps either. You can see some of those on the screen, which you guys can go see the combine tracker over at pff.com and see all of that information that's on the screen right there for all of the prospects. 32 and a half inch vertical jump, and then a 9'7" broad jump. Those numbers are in the 40th percentile, so below 50th percentile in explosiveness scores for the position. But then we've got a really nice 40-yard dash, a 4.59, and a really nice 10-yard split in a 1.58. Those are in the 90th percentiles for edge rushers. So you love those scores, but very strange evaluation type of a day for Cashius Howell, who I thought looked good when he was on the field in the drills, but did this surprise you at all? I felt like the explosiveness scores were the only things that really surprised me when it came to Cashius Howell. What about you?
Yeah, I think in those drills he looked good. And there's also Next Gen Stats had a good a tweet as well, saying in the pass rush drill, the cornering drill, we don't really get defined numbers in that. He actually hit 14.5 miles an hour in that, which is easily the highest of any edge rusher. Actually, the highest of any edge rusher since Will Anderson Jr. back in 2023 too. So in those drills he looked good. Unfortunately, though, in the measurements, it wasn't as good too. And Trev, I think arm length is very important. I think wingspan is even more important for these players out here. Cashius Howell also had the second shortest wingspan ever recorded for an edge rusher at about 74 1/8 inches as well. So he also seemed to have hurt his hamstring in the drills too. So hopefully he's all right there. But I think he's a guy, like you mentioned, 3 straight years of 90+ pass rush grades. He's been okay, I think, as a run defender throughout his career at Bowling Green and at Texas A&M as well. His length, though, is an outlier. And you look at it right now, he and Rueben Bain, if they were drafted in the first round, they would have the shortest arms of any first-round edge rusher since 1999. So it is a huge outlier right now. I feel more secure about Rueben Bain's transition to the league than I do about Cashius Howell. With this length, I mean, I really could see Cashius Howell slip to the late first round, maybe even the early second round, honestly. I think there is a possibility that he falls to day 2 of the NFL draft. So I think teams will look at that length and say, man, I just don't know if it'll work in the league like it did in college.
I don't totally disagree with you. I think that that's on the table when you're looking at total projections. Ultimately, I think that pass rush is too valuable. I think that because of his elite pass rush profile over the last 3 years, I do think that he will still get picked in the first round given his measurables, because he was able to showcase some things that were good from an athletic standpoint this past weekend. But you just mentioned it there, and I think that we can transition it into talking about Rueben Bain as well. With Howell, it's not just him getting picked in the top 20 or top 15. You said that this would be the shortest arm length of anyone being picked in the first round at a defensive end position since 1999. So it's not just like, nobody's ever picked somebody like this in the top 10, the top 15. You're talking overall into the first round. And Rueben Bain didn't do any testing in Indianapolis, but measured in around 6'2", 6'3", 263 pounds, 30 7/8 inch arm length, which is near outlier short, like you mentioned, in a lot of ways, and smaller hands as well. 9 1/8 inch hand size. So we don't have any sort of athletic scores. The production scores, obviously, for Rueben Bain are off the charts. But what do you think the conversation is like here with Bain? Because I'm still of the mindset, I don't really care.
Yeah.
I really don't. Yeah, do I wish his arms were longer? Sure. But he is a player who uses even less length almost to his advantage a little bit with how fast his hands move, how precise his hands are, how close they are to the body, how powerful they are when he is punching and pressing those offensive linemen, and the natural leverage that he has with those shorter arms as well to really get offensive linemen on their heels. The production and the tape, to me, still speaks for itself. I'd still be considering, and probably even would be the front runner still for me, to take him at number 2 overall to the Jets. Now, kind of depends on what their defensive scheme is now with T'Vondre Sweat coming in. Like, are they really looking for much more of a stand-up edge rusher type of a player? That conversation's a little bit different. But worthy of a top 3 overall pick in this class, I still believe that. Do you think that the league, well, first of all, do you still believe that? And then I'd love to kind of go back and forth with you about whether you think the league is going to drop him a little bit more.
Yeah, so Trev, I don't know if you actually saw this. Before we get into that, though, there's a little bit of a controversy right now with Rueben Bain's arm length because I don't know if you saw Adam Schefter's tweet.
Oh, the Schefter tweet.
Yeah,
yes.
2 teams had him above 32 inches. So it's like, okay, we don't know what his arm length actually is. Maybe at the pro day we'll get the official measurement there. But I think the one thing, too, that's important to note with this, too, he did come in with a 77.5-inch wingspan, which is 11th percentile. Again, not good at all, but it's still over 3 inches bigger than Cashius Howell. And like I said before, I think wingspan is more important than arm length in a lot of cases for these players. But you mentioned it, Trev. I would take this guy in the top 3, top 2 of the draft, and not think twice about it. The tape is a tape, in my opinion. You know, he led the nation in pressures this past year with 83 of them, 93 PFF grade this past year, 86 run defense grade this past year, too. These measurables won't help him, and there might be some teams like the Jets and like the Cardinals and like the Titans that might get a little squeamish taking him in the top 4 or 5 of the draft right now, but I would take him in the top 5 still. I think this draft is not top-heavy enough to lower a guy who had an unreal year like Rueben Bain Jr. just did down to, you know, the late back half of the top 10 or even outside of the top 10. This draft is not good enough to do that. There are other guys in this draft. Like if you're going to take an Arvell Reese or something like that over Rueben Bain, I have more questions with Arvell Reese's tape than I do with Rueben Bain Jr. right now. So I think the tape is the tape. He had one of the best years of any player. I think he was the second best player, I'd argue, in college football this past year behind Fernando Mendoza. I think he is deserving of being the second pick after Fernando Mendoza in this draft. But I don't know if the NFL will do it, though, because like I said before, it's a huge outlier for edge rushers going in the first round to have that kind of arm length.
Yeah, I think that we're sitting at the same table here where I would take him top 3. He would still probably be the front runner for me for the New York Jets at number 2 overall. Again, kind of depending on exactly what their defensive front philosophy is going to be after the Sweat and Jermaine Johnson trade. However, I don't think the NFL is going to agree. Yeah. I think Arvell Reese is going to go ahead of him. I think Sony Styles is going to go ahead of him. David Bailey, who we'll talk about in a second, I think that he will go ahead of Rueben Bain as well, just because I don't. It's so much of an outlier, right? And here's what I'll say about short arms, because a lot of people are bringing up the Will Campbell comparison. You kind of have to have length as a point of your game at offensive tackle. Like playing offensive tackle, you can have shorter arms and you can still play offensive tackle well, but you are faced with situations in which having long arms would be an advantage, or at least a lack of a disadvantage, constantly, no matter how you play. Now, of course, like you can do different things with how you set and your punch timing and your like whatever you're trying to do. Like you can do things to mitigate having shorter arms, which I think is the conversation we've had with Will Campbell and why I don't think that it's, you know, a nail in a coffin what we saw during the playoffs with him. But as an offensive tackle, you are faced with those situations where it would be very nice and advantageous to have longer arms every single week, every single game, multiple times per game. As a pass rusher, if you don't win with length, like if you're not trying to win with long arm moves and things like that, it's not the worst thing in the world. Bain doesn't win with length. There's nothing in Bain's tape that shows you, wow, you know, he won a lot using length-based moves at the college level, and he's just not going to be able to do that at the NFL level. That's kind of the conversation that you have to have. He won with power. He won with pass rush moves. He won with staying clean, getting off the ball very, very quickly, leverage. Obviously, the run defense speaks for itself as well. None of that changes now that we know for sure, because we should have kind of known already, that he has smaller arms. So whether or not the NFL is going to draft him early is sort of a little bit of a different conversation, but my view of Bain does not change at all whatsoever from what we had this week, because he doesn't win in ways where I go, man, those shorter arms, you won't be able to win the same ways that you won in college in the NFL. It's just not the case with him. He doesn't win with length in college, and so the translatable, elite, dominant ways that he won in college based around a strength profile, that's going to translate. That'll still be there going into the NFL. So that's kind of how I view Bain when it comes to the arm length discussion.
Yeah, that's a terrific point right there, Trev, because when you watch his tape, like you mentioned, he's not winning with long arm moves, right? He's winning with his bend, like you said, his leverage before, his power as well. I do want to point out, too, I know there's a lot of people when the arm length first came out saying, oh, well, he has to play defensive tackle now at the NFL. He also did measure in at 263 pounds, which is a lot lighter than what Miami had him listed at. I believe around 280 Miami had him listed at this past year. So I don't think he's big enough to play right now on the interior like some people think he has to in the league. I think he is an edge rusher, I think, in the NFL right now. Now, he is versatile enough to play some different roles along your defensive line, but I'm with you. I don't think his arm length is going to preclude him from being a really good player at the NFL level. I think his tape is too good this past year and really over his entire career. He came in as a true freshman and was phenomenal. He had one of the highest pass rush win rates we've ever seen for a true freshman, up there with the likes of Nick Bosa and Myles Garrett, honestly. And obviously his sophomore year banged up a little bit, but when he was out there and playing, he looked pretty good. And then this past year, like I said before, he was the best defensive player in college football this past year, in my opinion. So I would take Rueben Bain Jr. with that number 2 overall pick. I still would right now. I just don't know if the New York Jets agree with me right now.
Let's talk about David Bailey. I want to get to defensive tackles and the overall linebacker class in a sec, but I do want to talk about David Bailey because we sort of threw his name into the conversation when it comes to him potentially being picked over Rueben Bain. Measured in at 6'4", 251 pounds, really good numbers there for Bailey. 33 3/4 inch arms, so you're not worried about the arm length at all whatsoever with this guy. Really big hands as well, 10 inch and 1/4 hands. When it came to the athletic drills, okay in the explosiveness drills, 35-inch vertical jump, 10-foot 9-inch broad jump. I mean, like those are better than okay. I'm selling him way short. Those are good numbers, especially with him weighing over 250 pounds. 4.5 40-yard dash and a 1.62 10-yard split. Those are 90th percentile numbers there. Well, at least the 40-yard dash is in the 90th percentile. I think that 1.62 is in the 80th percentile, if I remember correctly. So, like, I feel like it was a good overall day for David Bailey, but then we get out there on the field.
Yeah.
And some of the drills for him, to me, it solidified what is a little bit of my hesitancy with him. And I don't think David Bailey has this like great flexibility to turn the corner and bend super well. I just think his feet are insanely fast. And I think his ability to turn the corner as well as he did at Stanford and at Texas Tech is more about that uniquely elite foot quickness. And you watch him get off the ball, his feet are hitting the ground at just insane rates. Like, that is his superpower, the quickness and the muscle that he has in his lower body to just feet on the ground and little explosions, little pistons in the engine just going at all times. And that allows him to get off the ball super quick, to get to the shoulder of the offensive tackle super quick, and then even to turn his full body and get towards the quarterback. And a lot of people kind of confuse that with bend and flexibility. Not that he doesn't have any of it, but we even saw on the field in the on-the-field drills,
yep,
it just wasn't quite as flexible as some of these other guys. And so it just, to me, it solidified the question marks I have of Bailey, yeah, I think he's really productive, but I saw the Von Miller comparison so much this week.
No.
Von Miller's just way, way, way more flexible than David Bailey was. I don't even think he's in the same conversation of how flexible and how Von Miller was able to win. Are they both very explosive? Maybe similar builds? Yes, but Von Miller's got that rare ability to, turn and bend underneath a table, if you will, right? That kind of visual and that drill of just how low he can get while still running, that ankle flexibility, that hip flexibility, that ability to turn the corner. And I just don't quite see that from Bain. So I don't think that we should talk about them in the same light like that.
No, I agree with that. I think Von Miller is some of the best bend we've ever seen for an edge rusher, and I think that's one of Bailey's question marks right now. In fact, Trevor, I think this combine kind of confirmed the tape for David Bailey in a lot of ways, where, you look at the 40-yard dash running a 4.51. That's excellent. It's one of the highest marks we've ever seen for an edge rusher. We had a 129-inch broad jump as well, one of the excellent mark as well for edge rusher. 35-inch vertical is great. So that explosiveness and his ability to get off the ball quickly is what made him the highest graded pass rusher at Stanford in 2024 and the highest graded pass rusher this past year in the country at Texas Tech. So that's confirmed that. But then you get into the on-field drills you mentioned before. Either his change of direction was a little sloppy out there. His bend wasn't as good as you would have hoped either. And you saw that on tape with David Bailey as well. This is a guy who wins with his get-off. Like you mentioned before, he has excellent quickness. He beats tackles to around the corner before they can even get out of their set. And he's got really good hand usage as well, too, which is what makes him such a great and dangerous pass rusher. But the bend is not as good as you would hope for other edge rushers, too, which I think you saw on the field. So I think in a lot of ways, this combine for David Bailey really confirmed all the tape that we saw from him these last 2 years at Stanford and Texas Tech.
All right, I know I want to get into some more linebackers and defensive tackles, but we've got to talk about draft risers. Every week on Draft Risers, we'll highlight a player climbing up the boards as teams get deeper into the evaluation process. That, of course, includes the combine as well. These guys are rising because decision makers are getting more confident in the full profile, not just chasing the traits. Well, somebody who has the traits and so much more is a guy that we started the show with, and that is Sony Styles. Sony Styles is just an unbelievable prospect in this class. One of the biggest draft risers that we have. You see the numbers on the screen. It's all 90th percentile, 99th percentile in some cases, and he had such a good week that he is rising maybe even to the number 2 overall selection behind Fernando Mendoza. When you're trying to identify risers like that, it's not about guessing. It's about having better tools, better data, and a better process. That same approach applies to when you're making decisions with your own money as well. If you want to make smarter picks with your portfolio, Tasty Trade gives you the advanced tools and data to do so. You can trade stocks, options, futures, and so much more all on one platform. Tasty Trade offers a low commission, including a $10 cap per leg on option trades, so you can keep more of what you earn. The platform includes back testing and risk analysis, tools to help you plan ahead and manage those risks. Traders can use features like active trading mode, one-click trading, and smart order tracking as well. Tasty Trade offers dozens of educational courses that you can access free with your account as well. Visit tastytrade.com/PFF today. Tasty Trade Incorporated is a registered broker-dealer and member of FINRA, NFA, and SIPC. Let's talk about Caleb Banks here. Caleb Banks, let's go defensive tackle. We'll start with him. 97th percentile height, 94th percentile weight. Biggest wingspan ever, I believe, for a defensive tackle. Just absolutely crazy. Great broad jump, great vertical jump, showcasing that explosiveness as well. Really, really great week for Caleb Banks, who I think is also a draft riser throughout the process, whether it was at the Senior Bowl or now the Combine. I think we need to talk about Caleb Banks in this top 15 conversation because I think there's a real chance that maybe the Chiefs at 9, right? I mean, if Jeremiah Love's off the board and depending on how they feel about Rueben Bain, I mean, I think that his stock is top 15 now after the last couple of months.
Yeah, honestly, picturing him next to Chris Jones, where if you think about it, like Chris Jones is also like a massive defensive tackle, like Caleb Banks. I mean, that's a perfect mentor to have for a guy like Caleb Banks right there. I mean, Trev, I don't know if there's a single prospect in this draft, maybe Sony Styles, that's had a better last month than Caleb Banks, honestly, because this is a guy that only played in 3 games this past year. And a lot of people were saying, is he worth a first-round pick? Only played in 3 games through that foot injury. He goes to the Senior Bowl, has a great week at the Senior Bowl. He goes to the Combine, has a great week at the Combine as well. I think he has cemented himself now as a first-round pick at the very least in this draft, if not a top 20, top 15 pick, like you said as well. I mean, he's just a massive monster of a human being at 6'6". That's 97th percentile, 327 pounds, 94th percentile. I mentioned before, almost an 86-inch wingspan, 85 3/4.
That's
crazy.
crazy.
Biggest ever for a defensive tackle, which is nuts. But then, you think, okay, for a guy who's that huge, he's going to struggle in the drills. He didn't at all. He had a 9'6" broad jump, 32-inch vertical jump. I mean, he looked explosive out there in the drills as well. And, over the last 3 years, a 12% pressure rate is 6th in the Power 4 for defensive tackles as well. Even though he's had, some issues in run defense and, of course, the injury this past year, this guy's worth a first-round pick now. He is too freaky of an athlete, too freaky freaky of a human being to fall out of the Thursday of the NFL draft. So, yeah, Caleb Banks, I think over the last month, like I said before, going into the Senior Bowl, it was kind of a question of whether or not he would actually go in the first round. Now, after the Combine, now that's done, he is absolutely going to be a first-round pick in this draft.
Oh, yeah, it's just a matter of how high he ends up going. And interior defensive line play, I mean, it's getting more and more important as the years go on. If you have a player on the interior that can command multiple guys' attention, whether it's the guard in the center, the guard and the tackle, like whatever it is, even like the running back out of the backfield knows that, oh wow, I can't go pick up anybody who's blitzing off the edge because I got to make sure that I'm working inside out and I'm watching and giving help to the defensive to the interior offensive lineman. If the defensive tackle really gets by him very quickly, all of that can kind of change the math for you, and those change the math type of players are very, very valuable. So the injury history, the lack of production this past year and the year before, even, it was inconsistent, I would say, but the flashes, it's there for the top 20 and the top 15, and I think the NFL is going to draft him around that range. I really do. I want to talk about Lee Hunter really quickly because a little disappointing of a day from Lee Hunter, somebody who, as I feel like, just been creeping up a little bit higher, a little bit higher, a little bit higher on big boards and mock drafts and all of that. So he measures in at 6'3.5", 318 pounds, has 33 1/4 inch arms. So really nice size and length overall for Lee Hunter. So you love that he checked those boxes. But interesting enough, was there a lack of explosiveness from him on tape? There are some plays that you watch of him where, it's those obvious passing situations where he's pinning his ears back and he's getting off the ball. But general play-to-play explosiveness from him, there were some concerns. And then a 21.5-inch vertical jump. That's first percentile for any defensive tackle since 1999. Broad jump of 100 inches. That is just 18th percentile as well. So good size, good length. Obviously some good tape for Lee Hunter this past season and especially into the college football playoff. But if you had any sort of explosiveness, athletic concerns with Hunter, this didn't exactly help you out here with scores like that.
No, absolutely not. You mentioned before the fourth worst vertical jump we've ever seen for a defensive tackle. I was never really on board with the first round talk for Lee Hunter. I always thought he was more of a second round type of player. And I will say, a lot of these measurables that we see for Lee Hunter right now, I mean, he is like a nose tackle. It's not like he's going to go out there and blow anyone away in that. So I think he still is a really good player, really good run stuffer. He brings more as a pass rusher than you usually see for a guy who plays as much nose as he did for Texas Tech and at UCF, honestly, before in his career too. But so I don't think these numbers are as much of a death nail as they would be for, say, other prospects because of what his role would be in the NFL, but certainly not a good day for Lee Hunter. And I do think maybe the first round talk for him will probably quiet down a lot more. He's probably going to be more of a top 50 pick in the NFL draft rather than a top 32 pick.
Somebody in the chat, going back to Sony Styles, said, can somebody tell me why Styles can't be a wide receiver? I would never tell you that he can't be a wide receiver because did you see the comparisons of him and Calvin Johnson? So Sony Styles, 6'5", 245 pounds, right? Calvin Johnson in 2007 at the Combine, 6'5", 239 pounds. The arm length, obviously Calvin Johnson's got a little bit longer arms. He's got 33 3/8 inch arms, but Sony Styles is not that far behind. And Sony Styles actually has bigger hands than Calvin Johnson does as well. Calvin Johnson, 4.35 40-yard dash. So obviously Sony Styles wasn't quite running that fast, but vertical jump, Sony Styles had a higher vertical jump. He also had a longer broad jump, I believe, if I'm doing math in my head correctly. I think he had a longer broad jump, or maybe it's right there. But I'm comparing him to Calvin Johnson. It's just that is hopefully giving you guys context to how unreal Sony Styles' day was yesterday.
Did you?
Yes, he could be wide receiver. I wouldn't bet against him.
Did you see someone? The relative athletic score? Kentley does a great job with that, obviously every single year. But someone actually compared Sony Styles' scores to like different positions, and what he was like a perfect 10 in every single position, basically. I think once the 3-cone came out, I think he did fall down to a 9.99, so not quite a perfect combine for Sony Styles, but if you compare him to other positions, it's just what he would look like at other positions. He's still like almost a 100th percentile athlete at almost any other position.
Sony Styles was 3 inches further in the broad jump, but again, like just to even be in that conversation is absolutely insane.
Listen, I'll throw a fade ball to him in the end zone. I mean, if you can get up like Calvin 100%. Did, sure, yeah, absolutely, I'll try it out.
If you could play defensive tackle at fullback on the goal line plays, then you can put Sony Styles on a goal line fade if you make sure that you work it a little bit in practice. Who's going to see that coming? I don't think anybody. I think it was a rough week for Peter Woods. And it's sort of strange to say that because he didn't do anything, but I think him not doing anything also went into this, right? I mean, Peter Woods was somebody who we thought could be a top 10 overall prospect going into the season. It was a disappointing year for him this past year, but you and I have talked about this, and you've talked about it a ton on the college show as well. He was asked to do different things this year.
Yeah.
You look at that 2024 year, he was lined up at nose, he was lined up at defensive tackle, he was lined up at defensive end, he was lined up at outside linebacker at times. They moved him all over the field for Clemson in 2024. They basically just had him be a nose tackle and a defensive tackle this past season, a lot more traditional work. And he just didn't get the opportunities to really showcase his athleticism as much. But he weighs in at just 6'2.5", specifically 298 pounds, so sub 300, and just 31 1/4 inch arm length. So not quite the outlier arm length that like Cashius Howell and Rueben Bain were, but still shorter arm length for Peter Woods. And with him, I really wanted to see him test. If you're going to be sub 300, did he cite that he had an injury? Did I miss that? Like, what do you know why he wasn't? I know the answer is like, I'm preparing for myself for pro day and all that kinds of stuff. But you got a bunch of your other classmates here going out there and performing really well in these drills. You're sub 300. You're 298. I kind of need you to show that you can fly here. I need to show that you're a great athlete. You got to remind people of who you are. And I can't remember if he had cited that it was an injury that he's getting over, but I was disappointed because I felt like this could have been a week for Peter Woods to really remind people of who he is at a talent level. And I felt like it was a wasted opportunity with him this week.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't see anything about an injury for him either. And I know when he came in at that weight, I know this is actually like 15 pounds lighter than what Clemson had him listed at. So people are like, oh, he's getting that light just so he could have an unreal 40-yard dash or whatever. Because I remember, Trevor, we actually went over the 40-yard over-unders, and Peter Woods was one of them. It was like a 4.83 or something crazy like that, right?
Yeah,
for Peter Woods. So
well, and Bruce Feldman in his Freaks list this past summer said that Woods had run a reported 4.84, which a 4.84 40-yard dash, what would that be for defensive tackles? Let's see.
Pretty damn good for sure.
I mean, that would be extremely fast for a defensive tackle. That would be 94th percentile. So, like, if he were to go out there and have 90th percentile 10-yard split and 40-yard dashes, I mean, you're talking about a guy that you maybe look at his measurables and lack of arm length, and you go, I don't care. Look at what an athlete he is. Like Grayson Halton, right? Look at what Grayson Halton was able to do. And he's closer to 290 pounds. He doesn't have great measurables, but this dude's extremely explosive. And he went out there at the combine and he proved it. And he's going to be the talk of the town. I think he's going to be a big riser because of what an athlete he is at the interior spot. And I've just felt like this was an opportunity for Woods to be able to do that, especially with him showing up sub 300 and not testing. That's just not a good look for me. That's not a good look. I was disappointed.
And the length is a big outlier, too. Now, this Fran Duffy actually made a great tweet saying only 12 out of 252 D tackles over the last decade had arms under 31.5 inches. The only 3 that went in the first 2 days of the draft were Kalijah Cansey, Braden Fisk, and Kobe Turner. So those are the only 3.
Which are recent, right? I mean, like, they're recent, so I think that goes into maybe helping Woods, but the point still stands for sure.
Certainly, and I think, with the day that Caleb Banks had, now you start talking about Caleb Banks as being the first D tackle off the board. Now, when we do our D tackle rankings in the college club later on, I probably will still have Peter Woods number 1, even without him doing much at the combine or not anything at the combine and not having great measurables either. But I do think the NFL will look at this and say one guy has the biggest wingspan ever for a defensive tackle. The other guy didn't do anything at the combine and has not a great wingspan and not great arm length at all for a defensive tackle. And also coming off a year where it was a career low for him in terms of PFF grade and all that too. So I would not be surprised now if Peter Woods is the second D tackle off the board. Whereas if you told me this, not that long ago, I would have said Peter Woods is absolutely going to be the first D tackle off the board in the draft. Now I think you're starting to look at Caleb Banks, maybe take him over as DT1 in this draft.
Somebody in the chat saying, I can't believe Tim Keenan from Alabama only threw up 21 reps at the combine of the bench press with 30-inch arms. I thought he'd be 30 plus. I actually am also like the bench press. I don't care. Like, it's not super translatable. I mean, I love it just from a weightlifting perspective. It's hilarious to see these guys throw up 225 like it's marshmallows on a toothpick. But I also kind of thought that Tim Keenan would get above 30, and so 21 was a little bit surprising to me. 2 more edge rushers that I want to point out. You have this in the notes for Denai Dennis Sutton, the defensive end from Penn State. And then I want to shout out Malachi Lawrence really quickly as well. So talk to the people about Dani Dennis Sutton. I'll talk about Malachi Lawrence, and then I want to get to linebackers before we end the show for sure.
I got to look this up because I'm a Penn State fan. I am praying that whoever the strength coach is for Penn State, that Matt Campbell retained him on his staff, because it seems like every single freaking year, Trevor, Penn State players come to the combine and they murder it every time at the combine. And Dani Dennis Sutton is no stranger to that either. 6'6", 256 pounds, great size for an edge rusher, 33.5-inch arms. He ran a 4.63 in the 40, which is a really good mark. 10-foot, 11-inch broad jump. That is 99th percentile for edge rushers. 39.5-inch vertical at almost 260 pounds is 98th percentile. How about a 6.9-second three-cone as well? Some good agility for Dani Dennis Sutton. That's 93rd percentile. Obviously not a great year for Penn State this past year, but he had a pretty good year overall. 80.1 PFF grade, career high for him, career high 51 pressures, career high 29 defensive stops as well. This is a guy that maybe some people thought, oh, maybe he could slip into maybe the 4th round of the draft. Absolutely not. This guy is going to be a top 75 pick, I think, in the NFL draft this year. Even though Penn State had a down year, Dani Dennis Sutton still should be a 2nd or 3rd round pick, and he showed at the combine he's a freak athlete. He's not going to sneak into the 1st round, definitely, but I think this guy's a lock to be at least a day 2 pick in the draft.
Yeah, when I've watched Dani Dennis Sutton over the last couple of years, because he's been draft eligible over the last couple of years, I've read a lot of people who talk about what kind of a crazy athlete he is for a player of his size. And there are moments when you can see it, but I just felt like those were moments too often. And this, to me, I agree with the draft projection. He's not going to get out of the top 100 simply because of the athlete that he is at his size, specifically for this draft class as well, being a little bit more down of a draft class when it comes to top tier talent. So I don't think he's going to get out of the top 100, but I really didn't see a lot of this athleticism translate to the football field on a consistent basis. So, teams will take chances on these players because they think, hey, if we get him in with a good coaching staff, what you can't teach is the athleticism and the size combination. What you can teach is how he uses it and hopefully the instincts, and getting a lot better in that regard. But I just did not see that manifest itself in pass rushing specifically the way it felt like the legends of his athletic ability would have told you that he would be able to do. So it will be interesting to see kind of what the league thinks of him and where he gets drafted when it's all said and done. But good thing for him to check all of these boxes in a big way, because that's certainly what's going to lock him into that top 100. Malachi Lawrence from UCF, I know he's a fan favorite for a lot of people on Twitter. 6'4" is what he measured in at, over 250 pounds at 253 pounds. That was great to see. 33 and 5/8-inch arms. Got to see him up close and personal at the Shrine Bowl as well, where I felt like he was one of the better players on the field. He was also one of the better athletes at this event. 4.52 40-yard dash, which is in the high 90th percentile for edge rushers, 1.59, which is in the high 80th percentile, and then a 40-inch vertical jump and a 10.10 broad. Those are 90th percentile scores as well. So what we have here is an athlete, and he also is somebody who knows how to use those long arms and those hands really well. I saw a pretty diverse pass rush bag for him this past season, and sometimes I worried about the overall play strength for him when it came to, like, some people love him a lot, in the top 50, a fringe first rounder type of player, but I worried a little bit about the overall strength portion of his game. But I love the finesse and the speed part of his game, the explosiveness that he was as a pass rusher. So it was great for him to get out there and say, yes, confirmed, here I am, one of the best edge rushers, or one of the best athletes at the edge rush position in this class. So if you were a fan of Malachi Lawrence going into this, you've got to be really bullish about him. You got to be puffing your chest and saying, this is a guy that I think can get picked in the top 50. I think that that's probably where the conversation is now with him, right around that top 50. I think, mid to late 2nd round is probably where I would put his stock here after the combine, just because of all the confirmed numbers and explosiveness, especially pairing that with how well he played this past season. So that's kind of the range that I have for him. But hey, again, in a down overall draft class, maybe we start to hear whispers of him in the 1st round, because teams will always pay a premium if you can get after the passer and you can do it quickly. Clearly, with this kind of athleticism, Malachi Lawrence can.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of people in the chat right now even saying Malachi Lawrence will go in the first round of the draft. I don't know if I'm that high on him right now, but I remember going into the combine, I think he was 97th on the consensus board. Right now, he is not going that low in the NFL draft. I'm with you, Trevor. I think he's going to go at least in the second round of this draft, coming off an 89.5 pass rushing grade this past year, one of the highest marks in the country. Not as good in run defense. Has kind of been a theme for him throughout his career at UCF. Only a 66.2 run defense grade. It goes into kind of the play strength concerns that you have with him, but 40 pressures, 7 sacks. You mentioned before, a freak show performance at the combine this year too. I think Malachi Lawrence, I would not be surprised if this guy's a top 50 pick in the NFL draft because of how good he was as a pass rusher this past year for the Knights, and also how amazing of a combine he had too.
We're going to do a little rapid fire for the linebacker position here to wrap up the show because we've been saying that it's a really good linebacker class, and man, even if you don't need one, you should be picking one for how good these players are. So we'll do that in a second. But first, our game plan of the week presented by Western and Southern Financial Group, a game plan for your financial future. I think the game plan of the week is honestly, hey, what's going on at number 2 overall? That to me is my game plan that I'm thinking about, that I'm focusing on. What are the New York Jets doing there at number 2? They now have more options than maybe even they thought they did with Arvell Reese and Sony Styles and Rueben Bain and Caleb Downs. I think that they've just got so much flexibility. I wonder even if now, because of how well these guys were testing, does a trade down scenario now manifest for how freaky of athletes these guys are? We've talked a lot. Wow, a lot of teams would love to trade down, but who's trading up for who? Is anybody worth it? Now maybe that's the case. So that game plan is going to be very interesting to monitor. Just like every team win starts with a great game plan, your future should as well. With life insurance built like a championship roster, Western and Southern helps protect you and your family so you can focus on winning today, knowing that tomorrow is covered. Whether you're just starting out, building your dynasty, or looking to lock in long-term protection, their coverage options are designed to match your game plan. Visit westernsouthern.com/PFF to get your free life quote and start building your financial game plan today. Western and Southern, built to win, backed by over 130 years of helping people protect what matters most. All right, I think there's a lot of names at the linebacker position that stood out yesterday at the combine. Max, just any rapid fire or even just like guys that you wanted to focus on, somebody that really stood out for you who had a great day?
Listen, Sony Styles was the best performance of the linebackers. I think the biggest winner of linebackers, because we knew Sony Styles was an elite athlete, Trev. Biggest winner was Jacob Rodriguez, the linebacker out of Texas Tech, man. Listen, I just got my voice back after losing it after Team USA beat Canada in the gold medal match. I almost lost it again last night, Trev, like just screaming at the TV with how excited I was for Jacob Rodriguez and how he did at the combine, man. Because I think the biggest question mark for him was, okay, yeah, he had the highest graded season we've ever seen for a linebacker at the Power 4 level, but he's not that good of an athlete. He's a pretty damn good athlete, man. Look at these numbers for Jacob Rodriguez right here. 4.57 in the 40, 80th percentile. 38.5-inch vertical, 88th percentile. How about this, Trev? A 6.9 second 3-cone, crazy. 86th percentile. I don't know if you saw a tweet from our good friend Brett Coleman. He was there watching them. He said that all these guys are obviously dead tired because obviously the 3-cone happens last for these guys. So their legs were made out of jelly. I think was his exact quote he used in there. Jacob Rodriguez said did this drill about 10 different times to get this exact number that he wanted. So while other guys were maybe doing it once or maybe no times at all, J-Rod did it 10 different times to get his number, even though he was doggone tired out there, coming off, like I said before, the highest graded season we've ever seen for a Power 4 linebacker. Really, in my opinion, one of the greatest years ever we've ever seen by a linebacker at the college football level. Yeah, the size at 6'1", 231 is not going to have him go in the first round of this draft. And yes, he is a fifth-year player coming out as well. But this guy is cementing himself, in my opinion, should go in the second round at least in the draft, maybe top 50 of the draft. His tape is unbelievable. And the fact that his combine like this, where everyone thought this would be a weakness for him, he was actually one of the best players at the combine too. I was so happy for J-Rod at this event.
The conversation with Jacob Rodriguez for the longest time has been, what a great linebacker, what an instinctual player, so many forced fumbles, so much production on the ball, phenomenal grades, everywhere where he needs to be, super reliable. But what kind of an athlete is he? Right? I mean, is he a slower player? Is he quicker than he is fast? This dude's good. And checking these boxes athletically, I agree with you. I think he is a second round lock at this point for how good he played the linebacker position. And now it's just a matter of how high he can go, maybe within the top 50. Maybe we even start to get into the first round conversation with J-Rod. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I do know that somebody's going to get a damn good linebacker prospect wherever it is. But I'm pretty damn confident it's going to be anywhere in the second round at this point. I'll shout out Kyle Lewis as well, my guy from Pittsburgh. Now, when it came to the overall size, yeah, first percentile in weight for a linebacker, ninth percentile in height. The hand size is 37th percentile. The arm length is 12th. He's just not built very big for a linebacker, but I've always categorized him as a nickel defender type of a player. One of those linebackers that you can keep on the field when you want to go nickel, and you can move him from the second level out to the slot. And when you look at his athleticism, that is how he tested. 92nd percentile in the vertical jump for linebackers, 87th percentile 40-yard dash at a 4.53, 81st percentile in explosiveness when it came to the 10-yard split, 96th percentile broad jump at 129 inches, and then a 75th percentile three cone at a 6.97, which isn't too far behind what you talked about there with Jacob Rodriguez. This athleticism all tells me that playing in space is where Kyle Lewis is going to be at his best, and I really hope that he goes to a spot where this defensive coordinator is just willing to get creative with where you are using him and where he is in space. So I wanted to shout out Kyle Lewis as well, because I felt as though my projection of him as a player got a lot stronger after seeing him put up those verified testing numbers.
Yeah, for a guy who's almost as big as a safety, you want to see almost safety-like numbers from Kyle Lewis, and he produced right there. I think he's a great fit as like an overhang defender for a defense too. I think Kyle Lewis, man, is just an awesome football player. I loved his tape at Pitt as a coverage defender, and he's a really good run defender for his size as well. I just think he's a great chess piece. I really want a creative defensive mind to get this guy. Don't make him just put him in, pigeonhole him as only a linebacker or only as a safety at the NFL level. Make him like an Nicky Manwari type of role, I think, at the next level, and he could be a really, really good player.
Last guy that I'll shout out is just Jake Golday, who I think had the day that he needed to have. 4.6 flat, 40-yard dash, 72nd percentile, 1.55. 10-yard split, that's 93rd percentile. The broad jump, 85th percentile. The three cone, 67th. The vertical jump, 89th. So this is a big, long, explosive linebacker prospect who you talked about, okay, being some of these guys maybe be more of a Sam linebacker, guys who could play on the line of scrimmage, guys who play off the line of scrimmage. And then Cincinnati had Jake Golday playing in that overhang position a lot this year. I don't know how much he's going to do that at the NFL level, but hey, he's a big enough athlete to be able to do it. And I think there's a lot of customization and creativity that can be had with Golday. So I thought he had the day that he needed to have to also be a second round type of a linebacker in this class.
I completely agree with that. Another guy too, I think Anthony Hill Jr., not surprised considering his whole all the strengths surrounding his scouting report really lie in his athleticism, and he proved it at the Combine, though he's one of the best players at the Combine too. One last guy I want to shout out, Trev, that's not even a linebacker though. I thought DeMonte Capehart from Clemson. You talk about one Clemson D-tackle and Peter Woods that did not have a good day. DeMonte Capehart was one of the best athletes in attendance, I thought, at the Combine. He's probably going to be a day 3 pick in the draft, but I think he's moving up boards right now, and I was really blown away by how good DeMonte Capehart was at D-tackle for Clemson.
I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. I tweeted this out exactly about DeMonte Capehart, actually, that I think we get winners wrong a lot, like at the Combine, because we'll say like, oh, for example, like, oh, Kyle Lewis was a winner, but it's like, okay, was he really though? Because he's a smaller linebacker and he tested really well, and you figured that he was going to test really well. So does that make him really a winner? I'm not so sure. DeMonte Capehart was a player who came in with really big verified size and then tested very, very well, a lot better than we thought that he was going to test, given what we've seen over the last couple of years on his tape. So to me, he's a winner because he gave NFL teams now something to think about that they had not before, even while watching his tape. So to me, I agree with you. He was a big-time winner. Obviously really excited here because this is just day 1 of the on-field drills that we have. What do you got? The skill position guys next, right? We got the running backs, the wide receivers, and the tight ends coming up next, I believe.
I believe so. The Jeremiah Love 40-yard dash is going to be must-see TV, man. I cannot wait for that. That's going to be unreal.
I know. Do you think there's a chance that his teammate runs faster than him? I wonder if they got a little bet on the side.
They probably do. He probably.
I don't think Jadarian Price is going to outrun Jeremiah Love, but I do think it could be. I wonder. Think it could be decent.
I wonder if Jeremiah Love's agent said, "Hey man, don't run the 40. You have nothing to prove." And then Jadarian maybe talked some trash to him, saying, "Oh, I'm going to run faster than you." He's like, "All right, screw it. I'm going out there. I'm doing it. I don't care."
I can only hope that that was the case. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed this little combine recap that we had here for day one. We're going to be doing this for every single day of the drills, 10 a.m. every single day for you guys. So make sure that you're checking back in. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. For everybody behind the scenes producing the show, from Max Chadwick, I'm Trevor Sikkema saying thank you for watching. We'll see you guys tomorrow.